Caitlin Clark's frustration summed up the entire atmosphere heading into Game 3 of the WNBA semifinals. She admitted it felt like every game turned into a physical war zone, but this series against the Las Vegas Aces was on another level. "I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far," she said, before adding the only thing the Fever could do was keep getting back up. That resilience has defined Indiana all season, but now it's being tested like never before. The Fever didn't just lose Game 2, it was ripped out of their hands. The officiating was so lopsided, so chaotic, that fans and players alike were left wondering if the outcome had already been decided before the ball was even tipped. The numbers don't lie. 41 fouls were called in total, with 16 coming in a single quarter. The game was chopped into fragments, players hitting the floor nearly every possession. Momentum stopped before it even had a chance to build. Yet somehow the headlines painted A'ja Wilson as the hero, while Lexie Hull, playing through a painful back injury, became the target of Las Vegas's physicality. Hull was questionable even to suit up, but instead of being celebrated for her courage, she endured shoves, elbows, and cheap screens that officials rarely called. If this is what playoff basketball has become, then the league has a credibility problem it can't afford to ignore. Game 1 showed the world the Fever weren't just underdogs, they were contenders. Indiana walked into Las Vegas, into the fortress of the two-time defending champions, and dismantled them with calm execution and precision. Kelsey Mitchell was electric, dropping 34 points and proving she could carry the team's offense against the league's toughest competition. The Fever moved the ball, played smart, defended with discipline, and kept their fouls in check despite being on the road. Aaliyah Boston shut down Wilson, who went just 6 for 22 from the field, never finding her rhythm. Indiana walked out with a stunning 16-point win, sending shockwaves through the league. That win wasn't luck. It was preparation meeting opportunity, but Vegas wasn't about to let that embarrassment stand. Game 2 became less about basketball and more about brute force. From the very first minutes, the Aces leaned on physicality, setting hard screens, extending forearms, and testing the refs to see how much they could get away with. The answer apparently was everything. By the third quarter, it felt less like a playoff contest and more like survival. Players collided, whistles blew constantly, and yet the imbalance was glaring. Indiana's clean defensive possessions turned into phantom fouls. Vegas, meanwhile, bulldozed through the Fever with little resistance from the officials. Stephanie White didn't mince words afterward. Asked why her team couldn't find rhythm, she said it was impossible when there was a foul called every 10 seconds. "When they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor," she explained. Basketball is about rhythm, spacing, and flow. The Aces, aided by constant whistles, made sure Indiana never had any. And then there was Lexie Hull. If anyone embodied Indiana's fight, it was her. Battling back pain from Game 1, she easily could have sat out. Instead, she taped up, took the floor, and gave the performance of her life. She drilled 5 three-pointers, tying a Fever playoff record, and refused to back down no matter how many times she was thrown to the ground. Every shot she hit was defiance, a message to Vegas and the officials that Indiana wasn't going away quietly. Afterward, she admitted she was sore and had needed hours of treatment just to play, but she did it anyway because her team needed her. That's grit. That's heart. And it's exactly why fans rallied to her. Yet even with Hull's heroics, the night was defined by whistles. Sequences of 4 straight fouls turned an 8-point deficit into 13 in a blink. Every time Indiana fought back, another stoppage snuffed out momentum. The Aces didn't expose weaknesses in the Fever's game plan. They relied on officials tilting the scales. The box score made Wilson look like the difference maker with 25 points, 9 rebounds, and a handful of steals and blocks. But the truth was more complicated. She struggled in stretches, muscled her way to the free throw line, and leaned on calls that her opponents never received. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston fought for every inch, pulling down 13 rebounds in a war zone under the rim. Her numbers looked solid, but they don't show the pounding she endured possession after possession. Boston was hacked, shoved, and bodied in ways that would have sent other players to the bench in frustration, but she kept competing. Odyssey Sims also deserves credit. She poured in 18 points while slicing through double teams and absorbing contact. Every time she seemed to find a rhythm, another whistle reset the game. Still, she kept pushing, refusing to let the officiating define her effort. Those buckets weren't just points on the board. They were small rebellions against a system that seemed intent on denying Indiana a fair chance, but perhaps the most telling detail was how Kelsey Mitchell went from dropping 34 points in Game 1 to just 13 in Game 2. Vegas's strategy was obvious: suffocate her. They threw multiple defenders at her, bumped her on every cut, and face-guarded her like she was the only player on the court. Screens set for her were blown up by collisions that looked more like football than basketball. She didn't suddenly forget how to score. She was denied the freedom of movement entirely. The Aces turned the game into a wrestling match, and the referees let it happen. Even Becky Hammond, the Aces coach, admitted afterward that she wasn't thrilled with how physical the game had become. That confession mattered. It proved what everyone watching already knew. This wasn't just smart strategy. The game had devolved into chaos, shaped by officiating that looked more like protection than fairness. And now the series shifts to Indianapolis. This is where the Fever hold their biggest weapon, Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Home court in the playoffs isn't just about the rims or the routine. It's about the noise. It's about 17,000 fans who feel every foul, every whistle, and every missed call. In Vegas, a shove on Boston could slide under the radar. In Indianapolis, it will be met with a roar that forces referees to pay attention. That pressure matters. It changes how games are called. It fuels players who are already pushing through pain. Hull proved she won't quit, no matter how many times she hits the hardwood. Boston's composure under fire has been unshakable. Mitchell, silenced once, now has the home crowd chanting her name before she even takes a shot. This is the stage where frustration transforms into firepower. And the Fever have already proven they can beat Vegas outright when the game is called fairly. Game 3 isn't just another matchup. It's the pivot point of the entire series. Indiana has taken the punches, absorbed the bruises, and now they come home with a chance to flip the script. Vegas may have celebrated Game 2, but anyone paying attention knows what it really was, a desperate team leaning on whistles to survive. Now the Fever return to their house, with the crowd as their weapon and revenge as their fuel. If Game 1 was a statement and Game 2 was chaos, then Game 3 will be the reckoning. The Fever aren't coming home to survive. They're coming home to fight, to expose the cracks in Vegas's armor, and to remind the league that heart, grit, and resilience can't be whistled away forever.